What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the RAD Lab, a podcast that dives deeper into topics to help you become a better athlete, a platform for athletes, coaches, and clinicians from the community to share their stories and experiences to help you become the best version of yourself. My name is Liam. I'm a strength and conditioning coach here at RAD, and I'm delighted to have you guys along for the ride as we share this journey towards further understanding the world of human performance. Now, it's been a bit of time, I must admit, since we've had a RAD Lab podcast, and the lab itself is actually looking a little bit different at the moment. Reason being, I myself am actually overseas at the moment. I'm currently in the United States of America, here at Yale University, doing a little bit of research as part of my postgraduate studies back home. But to make up for it, I've got a pretty special guest for us lined up here today, and it's actually worked out even better because our time zones are matched up. So there's no silly mornings or silly nights for either of us. What do you reckon, Georgia? That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to wake up at like 5 a.m. just to talk to some random on the other side of the screen.
Absolutely. But yes, of course, we have Georgia Amoore in the house. Great to have you here, Georgia. Tell me, what's been happening over there at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, the last time I was home was maybe like 3 months ago when I was training in RAD, getting there every morning. And I think as a student athlete, it never really stops. I was in quote unquote off season, but I still had daily lifts and conditioning. But yeah, since then flew back over here, and we've progressed from summer workouts to preseason to practice. And if you're a student athlete, you kind of know that it changes, but it doesn't really change. The name of it changes, but it's the same stuff. So, full swing classes, football season, trying to be social as I can and kind of hit off a good balance in life and not be so obsessed with basketball. Because I think, being in the position I am in and being on a team sport, pretty easy to fall into the recurring habit of just being so like anal about, basketball and the sport that you're on. But, college, loving it. It's a good balance when you want it to be a balance. So a lot's happened, but not a lot. I would say a lot of the same stuff.
A lot of the same stuff. And it seems to be a recurring theme with a lot of the people that we talk about that have like had the college experience. On the surface, it looks super great, which again, I'm sure it is. There's plenty of positives to it. But what people sort of don't quite understand is what goes on behind the scenes and just the amount of reps that you got to go through, and just the sometimes what could feel like a bit of monotony to your life. You're just training, studying, eating, resting, repeat until it's game day, and then you go out there and kill it. So
no, you're exactly right. My coach always tells us to. He's always like, don't get bored, get better, because we are on such like a scheduled thing every single day, and that we have a thing called compliance, and they are like, yeah, you're allowed this many hours and this many hours. And, I think every single college fulfills those hours. So basically the amount of hours we do is the baseline, and we already do a lot of hours. So it's like, you kind of have to mentally prepare to do above and beyond to get where you want to go, because as you said, it's full on, it's monotonous, but it's getting better every day. And you have to look at it that way. Otherwise you will fall into the habit of just punching the clock.
Absolutely. And so as of right now, what part of the year are you guys in? Are you still in preseason, or have you had your first game so far?
So it's September the 4th. So we've officially started like preseason. So it's right now it's a lot of like running and lifting. Usually lifts are heavier this time of year because when we start getting into like games and stuff, they kind of ease off, and you don't want to like obviously ruin your body before you play a game. So right now it's getting into shape, getting as strong as possible. And we'll do this till September 20 something, and then official practice starts. So that means our hours per week goes from something like 8 to 20 or something like that. But yeah, as I said, just right now, getting into shape, developing chemistry, getting used to the balance of going to class and then, maybe having a quick lift and then going back to class, then having to come back and get up shots. Like, this is the perfect time now, especially for freshmen or transfers, to get used to the way we do things. So we're in preseason, condition lifting, and then before you know it, you blink and it's the season time. We have our first game November 6th, so we still have a little bit of time before then.
Hmm. And a lot of people talk about, particularly like in team sports, there has to be a really strong culture around a group to sort of breed success. We'll go into the success that you've had over the last couple of years a little bit later on, but how do you find, especially being a senior now, I suppose, at college, how do you find, I suppose it's probably a challenging thing sometimes for freshmen to come into a new environment, especially something that's sort of, almost considered pretty much the elite level already, where you guys are, you're training nearly every day. And as we said, you've got a lot of other commitments to kind of go as well. How important do you find the team environment is, I suppose, to the success of the group and trying to sort of mesh together?
Yeah, it's massive. I think, we play some teams and they have an abundance of talent one-on-one, but they just can't mesh as a team. So therefore they just don't play well together. And I think it starts from day one. And as you said, freshmen coming in, it is a challenge. I struggled. I bloody hated it. My first, like the first summer, I hated it. I hated, the conditioning and the pressure to like put on yourself to get so much better. And you touched on it. It's elite level, but I think now, especially the way that it is with NIL and student athletes being able to earn money, like I think we are borderline professional, and that's not a disrespect to like the level. Like obviously, you go to the next level for us would be the WNBA. Probably, I would get smashed. But in terms of the way we have to go about things, our like professionalism, working out, business side of things, like it's completely changed. So I think as a freshman for me, I had to, first of all, I had to get used to the lifts and the running and the eating, because college campuses, I'm in a college town, so everything is pretty much revolved around Virginia Tech. It's cheap because students live here. The groceries aren't sometimes the best, the produce isn't fresh. You get student stipends and you have to make do with that. So it's, my first summer here it was a struggle because I had to figure out, what to buy, when to eat. I was so used to just, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but now for me, it's, breakfast, pre-workout, post-workout, making sure I'm recovering. And I used to recover with Chick-fil-A chicken minis and biscuits and like that, because it was cheap and it was just on the way back to my dorm and I was exhausted after doing my first proper Olympic lift session in a while. So I think, coming in, you're gonna fall, you're gonna hit rock bottom. For some, if you don't, congratulations. I envy you. But my freshman year, I struggled so hard. And I think ever since then, just taking little notes of what to do, how to, avoid all of those issues. And going into my senior year, I'm still figuring stuff out about myself. The way habits change, the way I have to now prepare my body because I have played so many minutes. I've been lucky enough to start essentially every game, start from my freshman year to now, playing a lot of minutes, a lot of load. And, we went far in last year's tournament, so that took a lot on my body too. So I'm figuring out now how to take care of it, recover properly, eat properly. It's ever changing. And, it has to be up to you to do that because no one's going to sit down and tell you everything. Obviously, you're going to have resources, you're going to have help, but it's going to be up to you to go and seek that out.
Yeah, for sure. I think it shows a real sign of maturity in an athlete when they start to almost work alongside a coach when it comes to things like self-regulating and sort of understanding, where they are, not just in the season, but just how they're feeling overall. It's really important to learn, and it just takes time. It should come from experience. There's no sort of silver bullet to figuring out, what exactly that is. It's different for everyone, but I think it's a really important part of the journey that we've sort of noticed. Being a successful athlete requires that extra care around yourself and actually sort of looking inwardly and understanding, how am I feeling right now? Am I prepared for this game? Does this lift feel good? Am I eating enough? Am I sleeping? How's the life stresses and things like that? So yeah, it's certainly a big part of the journey, but I think if you can sort of start to figure it out as you go along the way, it certainly helps, doesn't it?
Right. And especially for me, you come back to talking about chemistry, like I make sure that I try and relay, my struggles to the freshmen coming in, and that only builds us, like makes us tight knit, but maybe it helps them get one of those little mess ups that I had and they can have like a even better freshman year. So yeah, it's all about constant communication, I think, and being vulnerable and open in every aspect.
Absolutely. I think even, as a coach, you can go into a new environment or something like that, and you can often be sort of feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And the most reassuring thing that you can sort of get in that scenario is other coaches there or athletes being like, hey, look, we're actually in the trenches too. Like, we're not perfect. We don't have this sort of, stigma around, being perfect. Of course, we have high standards and we look to sort of chase those. But yeah, it's certainly helpful when people are like human about it, I suppose.
Right.
Leading on from that, Georgia, something that I wanted to ask you about was, of course, the big run that we had last year in the ACC, and then heading on into the Final Four of the NCAA. Give us a little bit of an overview first of what that'll look like for the people that maybe don't quite understand what all that means. Give us the storyline first, and then we'll sort of we'll get into, I guess, the process behind it and how everything went.
Yep. So for the college basketball season, there's a regular season, then there's like a postseason run. The regular season, it's 20 something games, give or take. I think we finish about end of Feb, and then we go into like a conference tournament. And this conference tournament, and depending on seeding, how you play during the year, you can get like a double bye, which means you have like 2 games off. And they do knockout, so they don't do like 1v4, 2v3. Like it's you lose, you go home. So for us, the ACC tournament, we were fortunate enough to get the double bye, which helped us. We still had to play 3 consecutive games in 3 days though, which is insane. But imagine playing 4 or 5, like that's insane. So we started out, we played Miami the first game, and I think that earlier in the season we lost to them and we shouldn't have. But we were a highly regarded team all year, so everyone had their best shots at us, and I think it was important for us to lose to them because we had to get our stuff together and realize that we can't just be on this high horse. Like, we have to show who we are and what we're made of. So we played Miami, blew them out the water. We had some revenge to take care of. And then I don't even think it was a full 24. It wasn't a full 24 hours. We essentially played the next morning against Duke. And we had already played Duke twice in the regular season. The first time they absolutely smashed us. Second time we absolutely smashed them. So we knew it was going to be tight. So we started off that game and we ended up winning, which was great. And then once again, not even 24 hours after, we played Louisville. And, they're one of like the best teams in the nation. They're notable. They have, great players, and it was really tight. And at this point, everyone's just knackered. You have absolutely 0 time for recovery. You have 0 time to like eat properly. Like, I was, after the Duke game, I was in my hotel room shoving down Olive Garden. Like, we were just packing in the carbs because it was just ridiculous. But yeah, we played Louisville, we won. And it was semi-sweet because, as you said, we played ACC tournament, then we had the NCAA tournament. So ACC is conference. Once again, I forgot to mention that. Win our conference tournament, we celebrate, we're happy, but it's like we got bigger stuff to do and get accomplished. So it's kind of bittersweet because we won, thank God, but it's like, all right, now we can't even celebrate it. I can't even go out, and not like this isn't a bad thing, but I can't go out and drink with my mates because we have training in the next 3 days to get ready for the NCAA tournament. And so we get back, we start training once again, and then we figure out we're hosting. So when you host for the NCAA tournament, it's national. So they do seeding, it's 1 through 16, and this is going to be confusing, but there's like 4 1 seeds, and there's a lot of teams. There's like 64 teams. Mm-hmm. Once again, win, continue, knockout, lose. So we hosted first 2 games, and I think we had a day rest in between both of them, but they're still so like high intensity, stressful environments, high strung. Not only do you play the games, you have shoot arounds before, you have like open practices. Like, a lot of the American stuff is all for show. Like, you'll have open practices, but it's for people to come watch and take videos and whatever. So we played 2 games in Blacksburg, which is great because we didn't have to travel anywhere or anything like that. Then we find out we're off to Seattle. So we fly across, literally, it's from bloody like Melbourne to, the other side of Australia.
Yeah,
like,
to Perth.
that's a long. Yeah. So we fly to Seattle, time change, weather change. We have 2 games and like we have a day rest in between once again. But this time these games are harder because the more you progress, the harder teams you play. So we played Tennessee and we played them earlier in the year and we won. So we felt good about this one. Played them, we won, great. The what people don't see is, like, as you said, the behind the scenes stuff. We play and we sit in the locker room after and we have to legit wait like an hour and a half before we can start eating or recovering because we have to do interviews. We have to do, TV, media, like local channels that want a PCR, even the game debrief, like it all takes time. So we play Tennessee and then get home late, once again, shoving probably Olive Garden down. The day rest, once again, is full of media and practice, and you kind of just get paraded around. Then we continue on to play Ohio State, and this is to get into the Final Four, so stakes are high. They're a very good team. I was stressing because they press the whole game. And for those who don't know basketball or like don't have much of an idea, it just means you play like full court defense and like send two to the ball, like they're up in your face. And as a point guard, I was like, I have to deal with this for 40 bloody minutes a game. Like I was sick to my stomach. And they had just beaten UConn, which is like the pinnacle of women's basketball. So I was like, we're in for it. It's gonna be hard, but ended up beating them, which was great. And then once again, like we win media, it's late, we celebrate a little, but not a lot, and then we're off to Texas. So once again, change time zones, change weather. We get to the Final Four. We land on the tarmac and we drive up, and there's this DJ and this like parade of media taking videos, and there's like doof doof music, and we're just like, we just want to go and sleep, please. But same thing again, practice, media, all of that. So it was so busy, and it's just a different level to the ACC tournament. And unfortunately, we lost at the eventual champions LSU. But it put it into perspective how crazy it can be. And looking back now, like I learned so much about taking care of my body and like getting like sleep bank is so important because I was just towards the end I was running on fumes. And like it was great, we won, we had fun, but my God, after we stopped, I was like sick for 3 weeks straight. I was so frail and sick and exhausted, but I wouldn't change it for anything. It was just a whirlwind. And I probably half of what I said was just gibberish to you guys, but a lot happened in those few weeks.
Totally. It's it seems like it was, just obviously an incredible journey. Not only it's big enough to be able to, get to college in the first place. That's such a big step for so many athletes, particularly, back home in Australia. It seems like such a big hurdle already to get there, to then all of a sudden be, rubbing shoulders or, being on the court against the absolute best of the best, in college sport. That's obviously an incredible achievement. But coming with that, as we sort of spoke about before, I think is that personal growth within, right? It's you find out so much about yourself in those times, when you're sleep deprived and you're shoveling down Olive Garden or whatever, like it, you start to kind of understand how bad you actually, want to do something, I suppose. So it's
Right.
obviously for us mere mortals, it's an incredible story. But yeah, it's really cool to see someone, come from the environment that you did, originally sort of being, around that sort of Ballarat area and stuff, and coming through the ranks as a junior, which we'll get into, of course, in a second. But I think it's so inspiring, obviously, for a lot of young kids, especially, when they see that, and they really have something to kind of aim for, I suppose, which is great. But one thing I wanted to ask you about those situations, was there anything in those moments, when you're, on the court and, you're getting a full court press, or, you're up against it, in the fourth quarter, or even, if you've just finished a hard game and you're sitting down and you're trying to take it all in, but everything's still an absolute blur. How do you sort of find yourself managing in those situations? Is there something that you sort of found yourself constantly coming back to, or did it sort of just all happen at once? You sort of had to take it as it comes?
Yeah, I think in the point of time, I usually describe it as a blur because it is like the adrenaline is so high strung, and you kind of not forget who you are, but everyone wants a piece of you. So it's like you have to meet so many demands, and it's like I don't even know how to explain it because, as I said, it was like a blur. It really took me a few months to really digest what we did and what happened. Because,
Mm.
you know, even as an athlete, you always want to win, you always want to get better. Like, we lost that LSU game. I'm like, oh, it's a waste. Like, I was so disappointed. I was so upset. But it's like, hang on, we beat, you know, Tennessee, we beat Ohio State. We went number 4 in the nation. We made the Final Four. Like, percentage wise, that doesn't, like, especially for women's basketball, this usually the same teams are in the Final Four. So I was like, it's crazy in hindsight what we did. But I think, you know, in that point of time, like I was just on the go. I was never really like recentered, and it's just like so high stress because you're always thinking about like the scout, who's their best player, like such and such said this about you in the media, or you know, like last time you played this team, you only had 6 points. What are you going to do to change that? Like, there's always like little things going around in your head, and I think it's the night. I don't even know how to say the word. Me being so naive in that situation kind of helped because I had never been there before, and I never had expectations. And I think every time we won, not we weren't surprised, but I think everyone else was. Everyone was
Mm.
expecting us to get the boot early on. So it was like I think we came back to as a team, and this is where chemistry is so important. We just wanted to prove people wrong and prove ourselves right. So I think that was like the best motive, I guess, for us to center ourselves and avoid all those extra distractions, was to be like, nah, we deserve to be here and we're gonna make sure people know this. Like, we're not gonna do any of this and create all of this. Like, we're just gonna win, walk off, and you know, maybe have some chuckles in the locker room, but our motive was to just prove people wrong because of, especially with college sports, you know, it's just it's media. It's
Mm.
for show. It's everyone's gonna have a crack at you on social media. Everyone's gonna DM you. People are always gonna say something, and no one knows what goes on behind the scenes. No one knows the chemistry you have. No one knows that I saw your tweet about my teammate, so I make sure that my teammate has a great game the next game. Like, it all intertwines, but yeah, it just comes down to wanting to be a team in chemistry and avoiding all distractions as possible as you can.
Mm. How much does the media play on your mind in those situations? I know you've mentioned it a couple of times there, but again, for the majority of the audience that we have, obviously back in Australia, you know, even unless you're at the absolute peak of, you know, like netball or, you know, footy or something like that, basketball to a certain extent, a lot of people don't understand how, you know, much people get talked about in the media and things like that, or, you know, how that can actually weigh on an athlete, versus obviously, as you said, being over in college where, you know, the spotlight seems to always be on you, no matter where you go, whether you're out in public or you're on the court or you're at practice or whatever. There's always someone with a camera or someone that has an opinion and they're posting something about you. Yeah, what was the transition like for starters, and how did you sort of, I guess, manage that extra sort of stressor?
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, for me personally, I went from kind of being under the radar and, well, she's a very underrated player, or, you know, like, watch out for number 5 on that team, to like, bam. And it was all in the span of that tournament,
Mm.
which I'm grateful for. And I think it was great, you know, as the team, but like for myself, yes, it was great. I'm not going to ignore that fact. But I go from being, you know, underrated and, oh yeah, like that point guard on Virginia Tech, to, you know, Georgia Amoore versus Caitlin Clark, or Georgia
Mm.
Amoore and Angel Reed. Like, what the heck? Like, I'm a mega fan of all these big girls, and now I'm like, I have to act like I'm
Sort of
like, I have to
there.
act like I can compete with them and there with them, and I just never have been in that position. So, you know, you would open up, and a lot of those girls don't have social media, and for good reason. I only learned this during that period of time because I would open up Twitter and it would just be like seeing constant stuff, good and bad. I'll give it credit; it was good and bad. But I think, you know, once again, as athletes, you're always looking for, not looking for the negative, but it's like you want to work on stuff you do wrong. So I can scroll Twitter and I can see 50 good things about me and then one really bad take on me. And I just think about that one, which,
Mm.
first of all, I shouldn't be scrolling on Twitter. But second of all, it's like, it affects you as much as you want it to affect you. And I think, once again, our team, we did a really good job at finding what we found hilarious that people were saying about us and using it as motivation.
Mm.
We didn't let it, you know, put a damp in our step or anything like that. Like, we used it as motivation, and it's kind of hard because people say you shouldn't pay attention to it, blah, blah, but we're in a time and place now where it's everywhere. People benefit from the sport, people profit from it. It's the NCAA tournament is so huge that it brings people together because everyone watches it, so everyone's gonna have a say. It's just like, imagine finals footy, but like everyone in America, everyone in Australia watches footy. Like, it's just huge. Like, it's times 1,000. Like, it's never like, and I do feel bad because I do hope that one day, like even AFL gets as much hype and social media recognition and whatever as like the NFL does here. Because I think even like college football is just blown out of proportion. But yeah, the media just, you let it affect you as much as you want it to affect you, and I had to learn that in a small amount of weeks because I went really from not really anything to like a whole lot of attention.
Mm. Yeah, I must say, even in my time, being over here, not even as an athlete, just as a coach and someone over here to do a bit of research, even just being around the environment of college, you start to sort of, I guess, get a proper grasp of how full on it actually is and how much it seemingly means to like a lot of people. When I had a friend offer me some tickets to a Penn State game coming up, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, like I'll check that out. And then I watched their first game, might have been Saturday or something like that. On the television, there's over 100,000 people in the stadium watching like college kids play football. And that,
Yep.
again, you see it every now and then on the telly, in Australia and things like that. But it's only once you're sort of over here, you start to really grasp like how massive of a scale it actually is. Which again, like, plays into what I said before about, how incredible of an achievement it actually is to get to that height to begin with, let alone, call yourself, a top 4 school. So it's certainly something that you can understand. You would need to step back, and sort of take stock a little bit to actually understand, what it's like, especially from the environment that you've came from, to where you are now. It's a very big difference.
Yeah, it was a total shift, but I'm very grateful to be in the position I am in.
And from a personal perspective, just on that, we obviously see a lot of athletes at that level, like a college athlete that's sort of, towards the tippity top. And, the mega stars that, people seem to follow, throughout these sort of different sports. There seems to be, we'll call it confidence, but a lot of us know it borders arrogance, at times. And that's sort of on and off the court as well. Like, you see a lot of the bravado and, people talking crap and all that kind of stuff. Apart from just simply being a true blue Aussie, is that something that sort of you thought, I guess, like your coach or like your family has impacted for you to just push that all aside and, just sort of be yourself, because it's the last thing that we see, especially over here. We saw a few articles pop up here and there on social media, like, oh, George is doing all these great things. But it's very, very different to, what a lot of people see, in college. And is that something, as I said, that you sort of found has come from sort of something personal, or is it just sort of something that you're used to?
Yeah, I think there's definitely two aspects. I think definitely, as a kid growing up, it was never argue with the refs. Like, you can't control what they're going to do. You can't control what the other team's going to do. Like, all you can control is you and how you carry yourself. And I think that plays a huge part into, at the end of the day, it's just basketball. Like, that's what you really have to focus on. And all the extra stuff is a distraction. So I think that's a huge part in it. But then I think on the flip side of it, like thinking about, like some of the American girls and like, how they act in their brand. This whole, like I mentioned it, NIL, name, image, and likeness, like it is a brand. Like, one of the, like Angel Reese, like danced on the court and now she's worth like 1 point some million American dollars. Like, it's real money. So it's like people, like, yes, have confidence, but some people, and I do think it's the people that do benefit from NIL, they have like a certain cockiness to themselves. And it's not necessarily bad because at this point, like, get that money. Like, I can't even fault anyone for like doing crazy stuff to get money because the way they get paid over here is actually insane. And from like as an international student, I can't benefit off of that. So I'm not about to be out here and acting a fool and trying to get all that because I just can't. But I think, it's just I have a certain level of humbleness and hardworking to myself, and I do think it's because of not only my family but just like being Australian. I think we're always just known as being hard nosed and just getting to work and like like I can respect you after the game. Like during the game, I'm gonna give it to you. I might have a few cheeky hits or whatever, but at the end, we're mates. Get on with it. And I think that's a good separation that Australians have. And I think I see that, watching sports at home, like, even after the footy games and stuff like that, like people like the boys bumping each other and whatever mid game, like you're tackling guys to the ground, and then after it's all handshakes and love and whatever. I think growing up in that environment has definitely helped, me being over here. And I would say a lot of Australians probably agree. Just a different perception of the game. And yeah, just a different, attitude, I guess. Like I can't really like explain it much beyond that. It's just an attitude and like a gratitude and a humbleness. But it's like I'm gonna kick your butt, but I'm gonna be humble about it.
Totally.
So yeah.
Yeah, I know. I totally. I think a lot of people will resonate with that. What you're trying to say there. It's, yeah. I suppose it's definitely, I consider it, a very big kind of ego thing, and a lot of Australians that we find that are at the top of their game in anything, but particularly in sport. There's very, very, very few that you will sort of see that have this big bravado. It seems to be, I guess, a bit more of an astute confidence in what they can do. And like you said, it's like I don't have to show everyone that I think that I'm going to, beat you. I'm just going to beat you. Like that's, that's kind of how you can break it down, I suppose. So, as I said, it's a very big difference in environment. And I suppose, as you said, when people can profit off of that, it definitely, I think, calls into question, people's ideals and kind of what they hold true, I suppose. If you want to actually be yourself, or are you just going to be some person, for the cameras, I suppose. So
right. And I think as well, like, and this is why I love Australia, because people back home are just real. Like if I played at home and I was acting like that, it's not like I would cop it.
Yeah.
Here it's like it's kind of accepted, it's encouraged, it's egged on, like and especially in what I've experienced, like some people like social media personalities, but then like they're good at basketball, but they're not as great as like someone who's really good at basketball but doesn't really have that personality. But like at home, like people just keep it real. And I'm just forever thankful for having my head screwed on, because no one at home would ever let me get my head too big. I can guarantee that right now.
That's awesome. Let's take it back just a little bit. I know we spoke about the journey of getting here so far and sort of being in college, and you spoke about the importance of your family and your experiences, but I think one thing that a few people probably want to know is, how did it all sort of start at the very beginning? What's your first memory of basketball?
So my cousin Keely, love her to bits. But she played for X's. She's from Melbourne. I don't know why she was playing for X's. I was so young, I can't even remember. But she was playing on a team, and I think they had like a girl foul off, and they needed an extra person. I was just there watching. I was in thongs. I was literally in like jean shorts and thongs, and I'm pretty sure they just put me in, and ever since then, just kept playing. Really, I just loved it. I love sport. I played all different types of sports, and I think basketball, I don't know if I was just naturally good at it, and that's why I liked it so much, because I would give other sports a crack and I'm like, I like it, but I'm not really, benefiting from it because I don't feel good. Like I used to hate swimming, so I was like, I'm not good at it, so I'm not going to swim. I'm just going to go and play basketball because whatever. But it's just a team sport. Loved being around the girl. One of my best friends, Sophie Mullen, another rad girly. Also played with her all throughout my juniors. So it's just, I had good people around me, good coaches. Paula Grills, once again, works at RAD. What a trend. But just had good, solid people around me, and I think that just as a kid, that's all you want really, is just to have fun and play and be able to do what you want to do. And I think, not to like make it about America again, but there's so many kids here that just like have so much pressure on themselves as a kid to play this sport and be really good at it because you can get a lot of money. And like the college scholarship system is crazy because like if you're good at sport, they'll give them out left, right, and center. But college is so expensive here that it's like, all right, this is my son. He's going to play football because he's going to get a scholarship because I can't afford to pay for school, which is fair, but it kind of takes the joy out of sport. So I think, growing up, I loved basketball. I loved, footy, all of that, but I had joy in playing it. So I think that's why I kept at it for such a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important with anything that you do. They always talk about like, do what you love and you won't work a day in your life. But I think, especially when it comes to sport, like the last thing that you want to feel like is that you're, dragging your feet, since you were 12, 13, however old, to try and, get to this level. And it's, as you said, it's something that just sort of sucks the joy out of, doing something that otherwise you would just love to do. So
Right.
that's such an important part. And again, it's like we said, a very different system over here in the States, and it sort of can sort of produce some incredible athletes, but there's certainly a lot of athletes that can kind of be left by the wayside and sort of lose their joy, I suppose, of the sport that they sort of love. So
Yeah. I think like another big thing too with the American ones, and I don't know if it's because like the day and age of social media, but you'll see like these 12-year-old, 13-year-olds, like the next football prodigy, the next basketball prodigy. They already have offers from Tennessee, Oregon, like stuff like that. And then it's just like, just as a kid, like sometimes you're gonna excel more than your other kids, and then sometimes they catch up, sometimes you plateau, sometimes you've done it every single day for however many years you get sick of it. Like there's just such a pressure of being the next big thing, the next big breakthrough athlete, and a lot of people do drop off. And like I think another big issue I have with it is like American football, like some of those blokes are huge. And they're just like some like genetics, yeah, but a lot of it's like dirty bulk. Like it's very unhealthy habits for like scholarships. And I think, once again, playing sport for joy is such a big thing. But when you start having to like change a whole lifestyle for it, it gets a bit upsetting, especially for a lot of people that don't continue on after college.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's especially, in the age of the media that we're in, and everything's so accessible, and you sort of see the freaks that come out from high school and all that thing, the next kid that's 6'5" lineman that's 400 pounds and can deadlift a bus. And it's like you just sort of you wonder how much enjoyment they're actually getting out of what they do. And if they don't actually get to the very top, will they still think as much of themselves as a person, I suppose. And that's a conversation that I've had with a lot of athletes, on this podcast in particular, is just, finding fulfillment as a person, separate from, your performance as an athlete. And that's such a difficult battle, especially, the higher that you get.
Yeah.
Let's go back to day to day. As of right now, a lot of people probably want to know, as we said, it's a very different system over there and everything like that. We've covered that already, but for the audience out there that sort of don't understand what it's all about, and I guess that kind of thing, what's an average day look like for you, I guess, at the moment? And what does it look like in season? You talked about a lot of travel and things like that, but what's the sort of, I guess, the main routine that you sort of stick to?
Yep. I love a good routine. So I'll wake up every morning my alarm goes off at like 7:12. And then it's like essentially like shower, get ready for the day. Because as soon as you wake up, it's nonstop. It's go, go, go. So I bus into school, and then I'll have like a class at 9:30. And so this particular class goes from like 9:30 to 11. And then after that, I'll probably have an individual at 11:30. So I have 30 minutes after class to, walk, because it's a huge campus. Walk from my class to the practice facility, grab a little snack, get ready for practice mentally. A lot of this stuff, it's like you have to mentally be able to flip on the go. Like you can't be switched off leading into anything. But yeah, I have an individual. which is usually like an hour, hour and a half, depending on, load and if I'm like learning something new or if it's just shot. So it really just depends on the type of workout. And then I'll lift right after that. And at this point, as I said, this time in season, it's kind of a lot heavier just because we're getting into shape. So we'll do like arm day, leg day, total body or abs or whatever. And then once lift is over, I'm usually back into the locker room, showering, grabbing something to eat, and then I'll have like another class in the afternoon. And then that class is usually like 15 minutes long, which is in comparison a lot shorter than the first one. And then come back, and then it's homework because we have stuff. It's America's schooling, I found, and I didn't go to uni in Australia, so I don't know, but I think it's just a lot of busy work here. Like you have a bunch of quizzes due every day, and it's just like little bits and pieces of. I don't know if it's just keeping you on your toes, but I think it's just a way to like sort people out. Like if you're not keeping up to date, like you will fall behind. So take a few quizzes, and then it's either thinking about the next day or trying to cook dinner or trying to find time in the day to like make sure you take care of yourself, whether that be catch up with mates, play Xbox, watch whatever sports on or whatever. So it's a pretty full day. But I think I've definitely gotten used to it and I enjoy that routine. But yeah, day-to-day changes because that's off season. Once we get in season, first of all, it starts snowing and it gets so cold it's not even funny. But same stuff, wake up early class. Maybe instead of like individual weights, now we have a team practice and weights. And team practice can be anywhere from 2 to 2.5 to 3 hours. And then we'll have weights after. And then if we travel that day, we're essentially straight onto the bus. Very, very grateful to be in a position that we can charter flights. So if we're flying somewhere, we hop on a smaller plane, which cuts the travel time essentially in half compared to some other sports. But for all I know, we could fly down to Miami, or we fly up to Boston College, or we fly to Pitt, or we drive to Duke or UNC, and then we'll play the next game. So usually our travel days, we travel the day before, stay the night, play the next day, and then travel back right after we play. They don't really like us missing out on too much school, so a lot of the times when we can travel quick, like it's right after the games and stuff like that. But as I said, it's busy, but I'm glad that it's a team sport because all the girls are doing the same thing. If it was like up to me to get around to places, I would definitely be a lot more stressed. But I know for like a lot of smaller colleges, they have to like bus 8 hours or I'm going to talk about something that's completely like the same but different. This is going to make gibberish to a lot of people, but there have been conference realignments, which means that you're no longer just playing teams in your little area. Like now, me living in Blacksburg, Virginia, potentially might have to fly to Stanford for a road game. And for those guys who don't know where Stanford is, it's on the bloody other side of America in California.
It's basically like going from Sydney to Perth to play a game of college
One
basketball,
game.
And then you have to come back and go back to class.
Literally. So all of that is crazy, but it's a fun lifestyle. It's not something that everyone gets to do, and I think a lot of people kind of take it for granted sometimes, or it's easy to fall into the habit of taking it for granted. But I love the grind of it. It's really fun.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing people can probably take away in terms of comparison to like a regular athlete, or something that I've even noticed working with, student athletes over here is, I guess, the level of self-regulation that's required being a student athlete. Not only it's sort of, I suppose, different as a professional to a point where, everything that you do is the club, right? So, you'll have your practice. They'll tell you when you're practicing. They'll tell you when you're playing. It's very, very set out for you. Whereas obviously, as a student, everyone will be studying something different. You'll have different classes. You have to kind of manage your time. You'll have different free time. So there's a lot of self-regulation that goes on to kind of get yourself to practice to be with the team. And obviously a lot of time management skills that kind of get tested out throughout the year.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think I said earlier on in this episode, I said that like what we do is kind of baseline. Like everyone has to go to team practice, everyone has to go to lift. It's like up to you to get in the extra work, the extra shots. that means it's up to you to find the time in your day to hop in the ice tubs, to get up extra shots, to maybe get on the treadmill for a little bit because you feel like you're falling behind. Like you have to be so aware of what your body needs, and like skill development or keeping up to date with skills. And yeah, it's even if it's like 30 minutes out of your day, like you have to fit that in.
Absolutely. Georgia, we've heard a lot about the story so far, and yeah, all the successes that's brought, and the changes that you've gone through as a person and as an athlete. What a lot of people probably want to know is what's next. Obviously, this year, you sort of run it back, you do it all over again. You try and sort of get to the tippity top. But have you sort of given any thought to, I suppose, after college? Is it like a push to the league? Is it going into coaching? Is it forgetting basketball altogether and doing something else? Where's your head at with that at the moment?
Yeah, personally for me, I've recognized that basketball is a way for me to travel. And I'm already traveling. I'm over in the States essentially for free. So I'll put my name in the draft, but the WNBA is really hard to get into and stay into. It's cutthroat. It's high competitive, like high competition. Very skilled girls. They're incredible athletes. It's just kind of in terms of the way leagues are set up a bit behind. I think it definitely needs change. And I'm not just saying this because I think it should change because I want to make it. No, there's a lot of good girls that get cut a lot of times. So I'll strive for that. If I make it, fantastic. If I don't, on to the next. And I'm very happy to just play overseas and get that experience of travel, and just like being around a team is what I love. So yeah, I'll try and play for as much as I can, and I think a big part of it too is just like staying fit. I love being fit, fitness, all of that stuff. Maybe I'll go into coaching. I don't know. I haven't thought beyond my dragged out, she should have retired 4 years ago career that I'm aiming for. But we'll see. I think what I've experienced already has kind of definitely helped me prepare for like what could be after. But I don't know exactly what that's going to be yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's cool to see so far. You've got an idea, and a lot of people just want to play. They just enjoy the game. Like you said, if it's sort of something that you feel like isn't a job, gives you an opportunity to do something else that you might love, which could be traveling or something like that. Yeah, it's your possibilities are pretty limitless, with or without playing in the WNBA. But yeah, who knows? I mean, I remember we had Jade Melbourne coming. She was at Ballarat for a little while. She's now in the league. She's killing it with Seattle, which is awesome to see.
Yep.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe you'll be stuck in there with her sooner rather than later.
I would love to be teamies with Jade. She's good. She's good value. She really is. But it's really good for her. She got put in the best situation, gets drafted. Holds it off a year, develops herself a little, and then comes over. And yeah, she looks like she loves it. So it's really good. It's really good to watch her do that too, because we played juniors together and just going through the ranks and all of that. Really cool to see her succeed like that.
Awesome. I've got a question personally. Now, being over here for a little while myself, I've had my fair share of Americanized fast food. Let's go, like, call it a cheap meal, call it a post-game meal, whatever you want. What's your number one restaurant of choice if you're picking some fast food over here?
Ooh, fast food, Five Guys. It costs an arm and a leg. Costs an arm and a leg, but it's good. But I think like that's different because that's fast food. But if I want like a fat, I'm starving. Do you guys have like Mexican chains like El Rod's, El Rodeo, all of that? Like, have you been to like a hole in the wall?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, we have like 3 El Rods around campus. So just go in there and just smash in a plate of like rice and chicken and queso, liquid cheese. Yep. Like, this is the type of stuff that if I was home, I'd be like, what am I doing? But like here in America, I'm just like putting it down.
No, I couldn't agree more. I was actually speaking to Radders and a few of the other guys back home, and yeah, you don't realize, I guess how good you have it in Australia sometimes when, you know, how easily accessible fresh produce is and how toned down all of the fast food is compared to, yeah, when you get over here, they're not lying. It's a whole nother world. I probably given myself like some form of diabetes, I reckon.
No, it's insane. Like my freshman year, I gained 25 pounds. And I just like it's just because you don't realize like what you're putting into your body or like how
Yeah.
accessible things are. And I took two of my teammates home, like Australia home their summer this winter. And we went to Wilson's and they thought Wilson's was some kind of witchcraft store with like the best food ever. And I was like, this is just a fruit market. Like,
Yeah.
but it's very true. Like I have an apple right here from the supermarket and I bite into it and it's just not
Mm,
the same.
mm. No,
And
absolutely.
it's expensive. So
It
much
is.
easier to get a 4 for 4 from Wendy's than it is to make dinner.
It's unbelievable. For the first time ever, I genuinely consider whether, you know, packing your own food or buying out is cheaper. It's wild.
Yeah, and I
But
think I find like a lot of people here like have to meal prep. Like if they want to stay like on top of their stuff, like I see, and it might be my TikTok, but so many meal prep of like the same meal every single day
mm,
because they have to like stay in control of themselves. Like
mm,
I feel like if I was at home, like I can confidently make a dinner and not be worried about like eating 800 calories or like 900 calories in one sitting. Like, and it depends on what your body needs. Like, if that's what you need, go ahead. But me personally, I don't need that. So,
absolutely. Yeah, we as I said, yeah, very, very just one of the many differences that I've noticed, and I'm sure you have as well since, you know, being over here. But yeah, I will say they do some pretty mean fast food. It's
they do.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Georgia, I reckon that's all we have time for today. But look, thanks so much for your time, mate. It's been so cool following you along with your journey and everything that you've done, and you know, hearing, as we said, I guess, you know, the behind the scenes of what it's actually like, you know, being an athlete at that level. You know, it's probably in some ways very different to what a lot of people probably assume, but I think it sort of, you know, rings home, you know, how human, you know, a lot of these athletes are, and you know, the journey that you've taken inwardly, mate. So thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's good to hear a good accent once again.
Absolutely. And thanks to you guys out there for tuning in wherever you are, and we'll see you guys in that next episode very soon.